Okay, welcome everyone to the first installment of our book club for women who run with the wolves. I'm so excited. There's been so much hype on the group, and me and Tash spoke yesterday, but we're saying everyone's already pulled so much beautiful insight from just the foreword in chapter 1, which I feel is like the shortest part of the book. And I think this is going to be such an incredible journey together, just seeing how we all take different things from the book and to see how it unravels in our own lives. I mean, I was actually saying to Tash now, I literally just like sped read everything that we had to do for tonight when I got home from the salon. But even reading it again for the second time, like so many things are coming to the surface now that I didn't even register the first time I read it. So I'm excited to read this book again. And I think it was Shanna who said this is like her Bible. So I can see how this can become a wild woman's Bible, because it literally has all the advice, all the wisdom, all the stories we need to awaken that inner wild woman again. So yeah, I'm excited. I know Tash is as well. I know Tash wanted to just set some, I want to say ground rules, but just some guidelines for the book club so that we don't end up all sitting here for 6 hours as we can tend to chat for days. So if you want to take over, Tash, you can just get started with that.
Okay, perfect. Hello, everyone. Okay, for those who don't know, but I feel like I know all of you already. For those who don't know, my name is Alta Shannon. I'm from Moon School. So what I was thinking about with regards to this book, right? So this book it's very much a red tent book in a sense of, it's about the experience of the wild woman. It's about that singing over the bones, right? That's what red tent is the singing over the bones, right? So with that being said, I think what is very, very important, okay, this is not very, very important, but I am going to ask, if possible, I mean, if you can't, it's fine, don't worry, but if you can, put your video on, if you can, no stress if you don't want to. Oh, look at all the faces. Okay, cool. So that's quite nice, and, it creates that community. But if, at any time you want to put it off or do it podcast style, that's fine too. Okay. So one of the most important things with regards to when we enter a women's circle, a moon tent or red tent is, and this is something that's come up, and I don't know if it is because of this Aries new moon that's coming up. I don't know why, but in the last few circles that I've been in, there's been a lot of difficulty in people, we've seen it in people as well, understanding certain boundaries, right? Kind of that dharmic law of social interaction, right? And so for red tent, for example, we have a few rules, and one of the rules are don't give unsolicited advice. Never ever give any advice unless you are specifically asked for advice. That is very, very important. Otherwise, it's adharmic. It's against just the law of social order. Sounds so intense right now. So yes, please remember to, and also don't interrupt a lady when she is sharing something. There is such power and medicine in hearing your own voice, not being interrupted, and allowing someone else to find their voice and to find that word that they sometimes are looking for. Because a lot of times what will happen in social situations is that someone will be like, oh, I forgot that name, and someone else jumps in to remind them what that name is. Don't do that. Why? Because the name isn't really important, number one. Number two, we need to learn how to not interrupt women in our day-to-day lives, right? Because this is something that happens a lot. is we interrupt women while they are talking. And in social settings, we've gotten to a point where we talk really, 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 really fast, right? Because we're scared of being interrupted. We're not given that space, that freedom, that time, that slowness and flow to be communicated and shared, right? So number one, don't rescue someone, right? Don't interrupt someone, but that's easy, I find, over Zoom. This is more for physical gatherings that stuff like that can happen. And I think that's it. Yes. And also, obviously, if someone shares something, anything that is shared in this circle and in this book club stays in this book club, right? For obvious dharmic reasons. I sound so stern. I apologize, but sternness is sometimes useful when we need to set foundations for the feminine to flow. Okay, cool. That's me.
Oh, you make me laugh, Tash. All right. So I think to get this book club kicked off, I mean, me and Tash are queens of just going with the flow. We will have one or two questions that we want to ask you guys, but I think they'll come up as they're meant to, right? Like when the opportunity just is in perfect synchronicity. But I think for now, what I'm most interested to know, and I don't know about you, Tash, is what you've taken from the foreword and the first chapter. So, I mean, I don't know if you want to do the foreword first and then chapter 1, Tash, or should we just do it all together?
Yeah, let's do it in sequence, but like, I mean, it's also a bit, I'm not gonna know exactly which one was in which one. Like, I mean, it's not that strict, guys.
Yeah.
But, like, you can mix it, but even if we just go by title, I think that would be nice, which is with the introduction, singing over the bones, La Loba, and the 4 Rabbinum.
Yeah, whatever, however you say that. Okay, awesome. So, I mean, let's just naturally start with the foreword. And I think what we can do is, if you do want to share, there is a way you can put your hand up. I think it's under the reactions thing at the bottom of your screen, or I don't know if it'll be at the bottom depending on what phone you're using. Let's just have an open chat about the foreword. Should we start?
Yes.
Okay. So, I mean, while I was reading it now, I find that there's two distinct themes, obviously one for the foreword and one for chapter 1. And the one thing that really stood out to me while I was reading the foreword is she's basically explaining how our societal conditioning and our tribal conditioning and all the conditioning that we have throughout our lives has stripped us of our connection with this wild woman, right? So we're born into this world, we're taught when to cry, when to sleep, when to eat, what to say, what's good, what's bad. Especially as a woman, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, how we should do things and how we should be prim and proper. And like, obviously it depends on the family you were born into and the people you were surrounded by. Let me just put it quick. But I think for me, the standout theme was just how this conditioning has stolen our wild woman essence from us, because we've become so disconnected from it, which I think is so beautiful and such a beautiful way to start the book, because I feel like as we go through the book, the stories help us to recognize where this conditioning has, in fact, stripped us from our wild woman essence, right? Each story digs into a different archetype or a different psyche or a different part of our lives where we can now begin to learn where we've lost this essence of our wild woman and how we can get it back, which I think is so beautiful. So that was my takeaway from the foreword. That was just something that stood out now while I was reading. you can add to that, Tash. Do you agree? Do you have something different?
Yes. The first one, Singing Over the Bones, right, was extremely special. And for the sake of keeping it really, really real now, because my favorite book of all time is The Red Tent, right? And one of the reasons why The Red Tent is my favorite book of all time is because it reads like a river. It's just, you don't even feel like you're reading, right? And this one, for me, it feels like I'm fucking reading, right? And that's fine. I love that. I love the intellectual aspect of it. I love the storytelling aspect of it. But I'm not gonna lie, there was a point where I'm like, it felt like, I don't know if any of you have ever read Leviticus in the Bible, but at some point it felt like that. I'm like, it's like, I was so annoyed. But that was just with the foreword, the introduction part, not the other part. But there were absolutely beautiful golden nuggets, though, especially with regards to how we have sterilized the modern woman, right? And the Singing Over the Bones was extremely beautiful to me. I think I actually wrote a question down here when I got to it. Every single one of us in this group here, we are all currently singing over the bones, right? We are all in the process of resurrecting this wild woman within. Otherwise, you won't be in this group, right? If you're in this group, this is a journey that you're taking, either consciously or even unconsciously, right? So each one of us here are, yes, and still collecting the bones, you know? So it is, I think, important to ask ourselves, or this is what the book made me feel like asking is, let me just get to that question. Yeah. No, but now I'm a little bit into chapter 1. Who is your Laloba? Who was your who was the woman who sang over your bones, right? Who played an important role in at least planting a small little seed of resurrection, right? So for me, my journey with the wild women, back then I didn't know that was what was happening, but mine started at 12 when I had my first period, right? So that's when the resurrection started for me. But the women who sang over the bones for me was Yaniki Ashira, who started a Red Tent in South Africa. And all of the women in that first initial facilitator training, they all were singing over my bones and resurrecting me, and breathing life onto my bones, right? And then, of course, the book called The Red Tent was the ultimate one as well, for me. But yeah, and I think it's important that, and this is so beautiful that we're talking about bones, right? And I think it's so important to remember these women and to perhaps think about, you know, this archetype of the wolf woman, Laloba, in your ancestry and in your heritage. to maybe perhaps, so that's what I'm doing right now. I'm searching for wolf women, wild women archetypes from my ancestry. So I am Scandinavian. I'm mostly Scandinavian, Russian, and French, but mostly Scandinavian. And so now I'm looking for all these cool like mythologies and stories of women who are these resurrectors almost, right? So yeah, I thought it was interesting because it really made me feel so connected to that line, that lineage. And it's so important where she says the one woman standing on the shoulder of another woman, like there is a lineage. And it's always important to, well, it reminded me of how important it is to to honor that lineage, to honor the woman who came before me, the woman who laid the foundations for me to resurrect, you know, and to start my own collection of bones, right? So yeah, I think that's me for now.
Beautiful, thank you. I love that question. I think it stirs something so deep when you actually start to think about, I'll get to now, Shan, when you start to wonder and think about who it is that actually started to start your awakening, to start you realizing that you needed to recollect the bones in order for someone to even sing over them. So that's something maybe we can all touch on when we have our turn to share. But I'm handing the floor over to you, Shan. Shana Banana.
Hi. I think I'm the only one in this group that found this book not difficult to read. Anyway, I found this book on a table of books in a petrol station somewhere. I didn't even know what it was when I bought it. I bought it because it had like the word wolf in the title and like a picture of a chick with a wolf. So that's why I bought the book. I started reading it many years ago. And so it found its way to me completely by accident. So I've always found that to be a very interesting part of the story with this book with me. So yeah, it was quite fundamental in like my discovering my own wild woman. I feel like you will find many women along the way. I think later on in the book she calls them little mothers that will facilitate your journey in some way or another. I think the most important thing to remember about the bone woman is that she is in fact nameless. It doesn't matter what you call her, as long as you know that she exists, if that makes sense. I also have Scandinavian ancestry, and this is the runic symbol for female ancestry. So your female ancestors. So when you want to call on your grandmothers and your great-grandmothers in Nordic rune magic, this is the rune that we use. So that's why that one's up now. And you would speak to Freya. She would be the goddess you would speak to in because that, as Alta Shana was saying, she was looking at that side of her history. In Celtic history, it would be Vivian, the Lady of the Lake. I think the most important takeaway from all of it is that in all these stories that King Arthur, even like Snow White, whatever, the wild woman is in all of them. She's just been turned into the wicked witch or the evil stepmother. They have, when I say they, patriarchy the Christian church. I hate to put it that way, but like they have vilified her. So instead of being the wise old woman in the woods, she becomes the evil witch in the woods, or she becomes the beautiful evil temptress that kills the pretty young daughter, you know. She is no longer the keeper of wisdom. She is now something to be afraid of, because they were too scared of all that wisdom. I mean, I found out something very interesting. Even in the Trinity, what is now known as the Holy Spirit used to be, in the original Hebrew text, it was the feminine aspect of God, the Hebrew God, Yahweh. And they turned it into the Holy Spirit because they wanted no feminine aspect. And that was over time, through the Middle Ages, through the patriarchal Roman Catholic Church. And it was specifically the Roman Catholic Church. When they used to do the Crusades, they used to burn the witches as a symbol of, this is what will happen to you if you do not conform. And that sits within all of us. Like when the wild woman within us starts to stir, we think it's dangerous. I shouldn't be thinking like this. You know what I mean? So for me, singing over the bones is the most important aspect of it. Is like, I mean, I went through my own discovery of my wild woman a long time ago. But for me, the most important aspect of it is to resurrect the wild woman in the stories, so that we can teach our daughters and our daughters' daughters, to remind us that's what the stories were for. They were so that we could learn to recognize Bluebeard when we met him, so that we could learn to respect the Baba Yaga in the woods, and that she wouldn't eat us if we knew what was right. You know, to learn that there are monsters in the world, but we are more than capable of protecting ourselves. And to me, that's the most important part of keeping the bones and singing over the bones. So, yeah, that's all I have to say for now.
That's such a pertinent point. I think patriarchy and all these things have literally ripped the sacredness and the beautiful divine wisdom from the feminine, right? So, like Shanna was saying, every feminine character in a story has over time been villainized because the men fears the power, the strength, and the wisdom of a woman. And that's how they have stripped this from us. And I think this is the book that is going to teach us all the things we need to remember. And you, again, Shanna, what you said about each story teaches us a part of ourselves that we need to reclaim, a part of our wild woman that we need to reclaim. So very, very, very incredible insights there. Thank you for your share. Okay, you, Tash.
Oh, what happened just now? Why is my hand up?
I thought you were putting your hand up. I thought you had something to say. Okay. No. Anybody want to go next? Anybody have something they want to share or add on to?
Me, please.
Yes, you're up.
Sorry, I don't know how to put my hand up. I'm on my phone and there we go. Can you guys see me? Or have I disappeared? No. Sorry, I've got my notes on my phone, so you'll just have to listen to me. Yes, touching on what Shanna was saying about the stories, I loved how she spoke about the stories in the foreword, and about how important the stories are, how old they are, and how she talks about this term, the trance teller, and she talks about this wind she calls, I don't know how to say it, but el duendo, the wind that blows soul onto the faces of listeners. So I think, yeah, that's such a good point that Shanna made about the stories. And she spoke about how within the stories, that's how we can also find that those glimpses of recognition, even though we don't really understand what it is, or, you know, it may be inextricable, but the stories help that awakening and help us get those glimpses of recognition. So I love the way she spoke about the stories. Then another concept, also what you said, also Shana, about how, what we've all said about how, the society has been sanitized of all things wild woman. I love that term, sanitized, and I thought that was really pertinent. And she spoke about, like, a lot of, I found the foreword where she spoke about what the wild woman was. And it was like all these strange concepts. Like, I love that line that says she's the smell of good mud and the back leg of a fox. And she spoke about all these like crazy concepts, which just goes to show the wild woman is anything and everything, and whatever, you know, you relate to. But a lot of these images, or most of them, were all nature related. So I think that's a big part of where we can relate to the wild woman and find her, or find the concepts that can also help to awaken that in us. Also, like how she spoke about the wild woman knows when to hold on and knows when to let go. She knows when to walk away, when things must live and things must die. I love that concept. I think it's totally amazing. She talks also about how we, you know, shed the false coats that we are given. So I think that's something. We are so doubtful of ourselves that we know when to let things go, or from our societal conditioning, we hold on to so many things that I think, you know, we deep down inside, they don't feel right for us, but we override those feelings of knowing that it's right to let go. Now, that's one of my just best concepts of this wisdom, is when the wild woman knows when to let go and knows when to hold on. So I just love that. Yes, and just how she spoke, about the stories. Let me see if I've so many notes, it's crazy. Oh, and I love how she spoke about about your personal door into the wild woman, which can be anything for any woman. Like, I think one of the examples she used was a scar. For some women, a scar can be the doorway, you know, in. But I think each woman needs to find her own doorway, her own personal door, and her own crack, and where it can, you know, where the light can start entering, so that she can really delve so deeply into it and what it is for her. So I think that's going to be so individual for each woman, and so different depending on where you are in your journey. So yeah, that's about it from me.
So beautiful, Nat. And I love that you touched on how she basically does list all the characteristics of the wild woman in the foreword, right? I actually highlighted like all of it. I was like, need to come back, need to write down notes. But it's all the beautiful things like your intuition and your creativity and being able to speak your truth. It's literally everything that makes us human, but in the feminine essence. So I love that she brought that up. What else did you say? There was something so interesting that you said. It'll come to me. But yeah, I think it's going to be a life-changing book. Oh, there's something you said about how the door. I love that. I absolutely love that, because it is, everyone will find their own entry into their journey of how to reconnect with their wild woman. And I like that. I love the example of the wound or the scar, because that is generally like the easiest place to go within, because it's something that's fresh and new and open, or maybe not fresh, maybe really old, but also open still. But again, everyone will access this journey or start this journey in a completely different manner. But thanks for your share, Nat. Okay. Shani, you want to chat again? Yes.
I just want to add like one thing about the women in the stories. They either vilified or they turned into these helpless, little baby girls that can't do shit, need some guy to come ride in on a horse and save their ass. And I can remember, as far as I can remember, I've always identified more with the witch than, like, I mean, the first animated movie I ever watched when I was a little girl was Sleeping Beauty. And Maleficent appeared on the screen, and I was like, I want to be her. And my mother was like, what the fuck? Yeah. And I was like, I want to be that chick with the horns and the green and the then dragon vibes. And then I was very sad when they killed her, and it just backfired entirely. But like, that's what Disney's done. They've taken these beautiful, strong character women and turned them into witches, or these beautiful, strong queens and turned them into helpless maidens. I mean, like, you know, there's so much more to us. Sometimes we are helpless. Sometimes we are all powerful. We all of these things and everything in between, which is what I think is beautiful about what Natalie was saying about all the weird things, because it is everything in between. It's like when you stand outside and you can smell rain is coming. That's ancient. No one teaches you how to do that. That's for me how you connect with the wild woman. Anyway, I just wanted to say it's very important to remember that most stories, it's either the helpless maiden or the witch or the whore as well. That's another one that they love to do.
Yeah, that's so true. I was actually listening, I think I was listening on Instagram today where they were saying the roles of women in society today. You either have kids and you're a stay-at-home mom and everyone feels sorry for you because you're not fulfilling your career, or you are a mom and you continue with your career and shame for her because you don't get to spend enough time with your kids, or you're the woman who doesn't have kids and shame for her because how can you not have kids? So, I mean, everywhere you look, they're creating these, they almost create these identities that just rip women down, the power of women down in any way that they can. So keep an eye out for that, ladies. I think that's a good way to start the awakening process. Okay, who's up next? Tash, did you mean to put your hand up again?
Yes, this time it was meant. What you just said, there's this, and I underline, this was the first sentence I underlined. The modern woman is a blur of activity. She is pressured to be all things to all people. The old knowing is long overdue, right? And then there was something else I wanted to share. So for those who know about Vedanta or study Vedanta or whatever, the part where they speak about the four rabbinim, rabbis, is exactly the teaching of, to me, it correlated so beautifully with the teachings of Vedanta, where when you become enlightened, but when you go through a spiritual awakening of some sort, there are so many different ways that you can go into it, right? And this story so beautifully explains that. If you are filled with fear, right, dogma, and what Shanna was saying about, you know, how society, patriarchy, for example, Christianity, for example, not just them, there are many others too, but for example, have put fear in us. You know, as a yoga teacher, I've had people ask me, aren't you scared that meditating is going to open doors to demons? I mean, so that's one of the rabbis, I'm going to say rabbis, that's one of the rabbis, you know, he came back and it was completely filled with fear. Fear took him over, right? And then there was the other one, can't remember them all, But then there was one, and you see this as well, people who go through a spiritual awakening and they can't shut up about it, right? And their entire life becomes about their spiritual awakening. And the spiritual ego starts evolving or growing, right? And this we saw in one of the rabbis, in my opinion. And the other one, there were four, but the one that I remember, and this is exactly what the teachings of Vedanta also teach, is, and I've said this a lot before you go through a spiritual awakening or become enlightened, you chop wood and you carry water. When you become awakened or go through a spiritual awakening, you still chop wood and carry water. You're not going to levitate into the abyss and into a different dimension and never have to worry about earthly things. Like, you still need to chop wood and carry water to survive, right? And to eat and all of those things. So it's kind of like, for me, it was like that story in this. And I know this doesn't really have anything to do with the wild woman per se, but that is something that stood out for me. And also another one that stood out for me was where she talks about the fat woman, because I was like, oh my God, that's me, in a good way. She is circumspect, often hairy. Yes, I always forget to shave. I'm always that one that forgets to shave. And then I'm like, hi. And then the first thing I see is people look at my ass. I'm always like that. And now with bikinis being like, it's beautiful, but like, you really need to be like waxed now. I was like, when I saw this trend happening, I'm like, this requires so much work for me. So I'm hairy. So I was like, yes, that's me. Always fat, yes. And especially, and not just fat in like in the physical sense, right? But fat in the sense of fat and full of life, right? Like a little Buddha with a big belly, you know, because I'm loud. And especially wishes to evade most company. I'm working on that though. I'm working on that. She is both a crower and a cackler, generally having more animal sounds than human ones. Yes, that was like spot on for me. Like, that hit home, because I was like, you know, I've always been told by my mother and women that I need to be, and friends, that I need to be like, I have to look after myself more, in the sense of, that probably just mean I need to shave more, but anyway, but like, I need to put on more makeup, and I need to shave more, and I need to, don't be so loud, and you have an ugly laugh, and you know, so reading that is nice to know that it's okay to embrace your design. It's okay to embrace your nature. For me now, it's okay for me to embrace my nature. I'm not always going to remember to shave, okay? I'm not going to. So it's also about like being more compassionate towards yourself, right? That's also a part of the wild woman and the wolf woman, and what Natalie was also talking about, like knowing when to kill, when to be compassionate, right? I know in the chakra group that we were doing, we went through a period where we were working with Lilith, and Lilith really came through for me as well in the introduction and in chapter 1, you know, where it's the archetype of death and life. You cannot have an archetype that is solely just for life, or just for, like, Carly also comes to mind, you know, like she is, I resonate a lot with you here, Kelly, thank you, with the death and the rebirth, that part. Okay. So yeah, Carly comes to mind as well, you know, like it's about, and it's this continuous theme in my life as well, these days, and also a lot of the clients that come to me and the work that I do, family, friends, it's continuously this theme that comes up with death and life. There can be no life without death, no light without dark, no happiness without sadness. You know, and in cycles, you see it too. I'm obsessed with cycles, for those who don't know. So, you know, with autumn as well, what a good, beautiful timing for us to read it as we're going into the death season, you know, where we're saying goodbye to summer, where we're honoring summer and honoring life, but we also know that there has to come a time for death and stillness and winter and introspection. So that's me. That was a tangent.
A beautiful tangent. I love that. Something that's also been fascinating me recently as well is like dualities and like finding the balance between the two. Like we know that there's good, bad, light, dark, up, down, whatever it may be, but like I feel like the spiritual path is finding the balance in between, so that no matter what side we find ourselves on, we always at peace. Do you know what I mean? I love it. Because like it's quite an interesting journey to go on. Okay, Shanna.
Yeah, fuck, we all know I have a lot to say. About the life, death, dark, light thing, I think the thing is not only finding balance, but also understanding that the dark is not bad and the light is not good. There is no good and there is no bad. There is only what is. And I think that when we say the wild woman understands when something must live and when it must die, she understands it is what it is. You know, like winter is winter, it's cold, it's, you know, the night is dark. It's not evil, it's not full of monsters and demons, it's just night, you know. The moon is no less beautiful than the sun and no less necessary, you know. If the moon were to fly out of orbit, the whole ocean system would fuck out on this planet, you know what I'm saying? So it's like a case of, I think, finding out that things are just as they are, and then accepting that is accepting, you find the knowledge of understanding when to hold on and when to let go, because sometimes things are just not changeable. Like I've been going through that a lot, having to give up my womb, you know. A piece of me died, you know, like a piece of me that made you a woman, you know, in a way. So it's like a case that but it is what it is, so you can't change it, so you have to learn to work with it. And like I've always been very interested in bone and blood magic. I've always thought of myself as a bone and blood witch. A lot of people think that's bad. But is a dog bad because it kills another animal? Is a dog bad because it bites? No, it's just a dog. It's in its nature, you know. I think it's when human beings do things out of malice unnecessarily, that's where it becomes evil. That's where you start to find evil, and, you know, and everything has its place, you know. I think that's pretty much, and that's why you have the triple goddess. That's why I can't remember what page of the calendar it was, but we did the triple goddess. You know, one is the maiden, one is, I think it's right behind you actually. One is the maiden, one is the mother, and one is the crone. But you don't have to be at any point of your life to be, you will be all three throughout your life. You know, you can be in your 90s and portray the maiden, you can be in your teens and come through as the crone. It's in you, you know. Yes, of course, I'll share you, yeah, the stone.
Awesome, Shan. Thanks. Yeah, I think that's also where the deconditioning comes in to play again with this duality, because we have been taught that one side is good and one side is bad, or one side is better and one side is worse. So thanks for bringing that up. It's such a pertinent point. We do, like, the darkness is not bad. It is not scary. That's what we've been taught to think, to believe. So it's that process of starting to realize that everything is a lie. Basically everything we've been told growing up, we need to question, because just because we were told when we were younger by maybe our parents or our teachers or whoever, doesn't necessarily mean that it's true. And when we start this process of really second guessing everything and really being aware of the beliefs that we have and the way that we react in certain situations because of the beliefs that we have, that's when we begin to decondition ourselves. And that's when we can now start this journey to finding our inner wild woman, because there's no way in hell we're ever going to be able to connect with our inner wild if we're still living by the rules of patriarchy and all these things. So that was a very good point to bring up. I think it's so important. Okay, Elisma.
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, everyone. Yes, so I just wanted to add on to that. Let me just remove this pesky hand. When you spoke about the deconditioning and the unlearning and the questioning, I think that was a very powerful image for me when she spoke about the shedding of the false codes that someone else also mentioned earlier. Because many times it's about, in the modern society, we tend to believe we must add. It's about more, it's about better, it's about adding. But many times it's about unlearning, it's about shedding, it's about subtracting almost. And I think that's why for me, the shedding of the false codes was such a powerful image, because it also implies that that woman is already in us. So it's not about really striving or, improving, adding. It's about shedding until we get back to the essence. So she's waiting there almost already. So it's about shedding until we get back to her. So I just wanted to share that.
Exactly. That's so beautiful. And I mean, I always say to my clients, we like our conditioning, we look at it, they always say like we like onions, right? We've got layers. But I think our conditioning is the layers that we need to peel back until we eventually, I don't think we'll ever get to the middle core, because there's so much conditioning there. But what you said was so beautiful, that wild woman is already within us. She's just got to remove all the beliefs and the conditioning and the fears and all that jazz that keeps her hidden. So it's not like we are trying to become this wild woman that is without us. It is within us. I love that you brought that up. It's so pertinent to remember, because I think a lot of us who are beginning our journeys get a little bit like too much in our heads, and we're like, oh my gosh, I don't understand this wild woman thing. Like, how am I supposed to be? Like, what am I supposed to do? But you don't have to be or do anything. You just have to find that inner essence again and make the decisions that make you happy and follow the paths that bring you joy. It's like it can be so simple, but we just need to move out of our heads and more into our bodies and start to listen to our bodies, our intuition, our womb wisdom, our hearts, like everything really, when we start to listen to every part of our, I want to say chakras, because that's the only way I can really explain it, but all these energy centers within us, that's when we can start to follow our dreams, follow our desires, follow our purpose, follow our passions. So thank you for sharing that. Okay, Kelly.
So it was actually quite funny that we were saying now that the wild woman is in us and we're almost born with her, or we are her when we are born. Because every time I was reading it, I was instantly thinking of my childhood and how I was just like a little fairy sitting in the garden all the time, doing my own little thing, saving all the birds, doing all that sort of stuff. And then as I was reading and going on, I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, this happened and then this happened. And then this happened that made me do this. So I almost feel like going into the book and carrying on reading, it's almost going to be like a chapter of my life and how I've seen something go and how I see something come. And so it was actually quite funny that you said that, because I instantly went back to my childhood. So it made me feel cool.
And also such a beautiful point. I mean, you know, from doing Deeply Rooted, how I always talk about when we're born, we're a blank canvas. And as we start to learn all these rules, our parents and our teachers and our friends start to paint this canvas of what we actually become. It has nothing to do with us. And this finding the wild woman is going back to that blank canvas and painting it yourself, I think. And it would only be natural that it's going to take you back to your childhood, because that's when we were closest to our wild woman nature. Before we had to eat with our fork in our, I'm not even going to get it right because I eat the wrong way around. But you know what I mean? And the napkins and like all that beautiful stuff that we got taught we had to do as little girls. So I think the wild woman essence is strongest when we are children. And that's something you can actually really tap into on this journey and be like, what would little me do? What would baby me do? I love that.
And like, it's so funny that we saying all of this now, because I remember like people would ask me, oh, what are you going to be when you grow up and whatever. And I would tell them I was becoming a gypsy. Like, that's what I was going to do. I was becoming a gypsy. So I really resonate with the book as well. Like I'm like with Shanna, like some of the words I was reading, I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? But I really enjoyed reading it, and I feel like it's going to be amazing. Yeah.
It is going to be amazing. I can vouch for that. Thanks for sharing, Kelly. Anybody else have some sense to share? Yeah. Just gonna have to unmute yourself or put your hand up because I can't see everyone on the screens if you are.
Can I go, Rox, if nobody else wants to go?
Shoot, girl.
Yes, it's so funny, Altashana. I also thought of Lilith, especially she also talks about the wild woman. I even made literally a side note that says Lilith and points to where she says, it means to say on the breath the truth of one's power and one's need, which reminded me so much of Lilith. And Lilith makes us, face our desires and really ask ourselves what we need and what we want. So that was, I just wanted to mention about that. And then I'll just say two other themes that came through for me. One of the things that I thought she spoke about, that this wild woman work is solitary work. So nobody can do this work for us. We have to do it ourselves. And it's hard work and we have to do the work. So I think it takes, a lot of courage for us to do this work, to really go deep and to find our truth, to find our voice, and to find out what we need, and then to actually bring that into the world. And I think at the same time, it takes so much courage, and it's hard and it's solitary. But I think as women, I feel like we have like a responsibility or a duty. I don't really want to use that word though, to do that, because I think that the more women who do that, the more that we can inspire other women to do that. I think that it's so important for us to lead the way, just like our ancestors did. But it's just, it's so stuffed down in the society. It's even more important in this day and age for us to speak up and lead the way, and to inspire other women to do the same. And the more women that do it will inspire and encourage more women to do it. So that was one of the things I took out of it. And then I think one of the biggest themes that I personally took out of, I'm mixing up the chapters now because it kind of rolled into sort of the same thing for me. But one of the main things I took out was about the embodiment of all this wisdom. So like, seeing over the bones are there, and Loloba knows, she has a knowing that, the flesh is there, and by seeing over the bones, by using that soul voice, she brings the flesh into something tangible, into the wolf, which becomes a woman. And I think for us, I think it's so important that going deep and going within and finding all the truths and that ancient wisdom is wonderful. But I think that we have to bring it out into reality, into the real world. I think you touched on that, Tash. And we have to bring it into everything, into our mundane tasks, into important things, into our spirituality, but into every single day reality. For me, that's so important to bring that, just embody all of that wisdom and truth and wild womanness and really bring it into the real world and make it tangible. So for me, a lot of that singing over the bones and bringing that wolf into the flesh was like the embodiment of embodying all that wisdom.
That's so beautiful, Natalie. I literally wrote down now on a little post-it note thing, embody. Because that's such a, that rings so true. And also something else that we were discussing in that group when we were working with Lilith was this idea of, and she talks about this in this chapter, in the introduction or in the chapter, I don't know, where it's about the wild woman isn't something that has no control. That's not what the wild means. It simply represents nature and being completely in tune and embodying nature and her cycles and her rhythms and her breath, her movement, right? That is what it means to be wild. It's to be natural, right? To embody nature. I think that's one of the most important reasons for me why I'm here, right? Why I'm in this lifetime is to embody nature as much as I can. So yeah, to change that concept. And also with what Shanna said, it comes to the same thing. It's not about, it's shedding, and what Elisma said, it's about shedding the layers of the whore, of the witch, the evil witch, the bad witch, the monster, the ogre, the weird fat one who lives at the edge of the town. By the way, I live on a plot far away. Anyway, so to shed those layers of shame, the dirty woman who never wears shoes, whose feet are always dirty and her hair is never combed out. To shed those layers of shame and embrace and ignite and embody nature and wildness. Yeah, this book is amazing. Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to share?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to what you were saying there. I think that it's not only to embody nature, but your own nature. So you can be sitting at the table, eating with the right knife and fork, knowing which plate to use and what napkin to use at what time, and which knife is for fish and which one is for fucking steak. And you can be fully shaved and have your hair did and have your eyelashes on, and you can still be wild as fuck. You know what I'm saying? As long as you speak your truth, no matter what environment you find yourself in, you are an embodiment of the wild woman. I really feel that if you can speak your truth and speak from your authentic self, in spite of your surroundings, in spite of if you're afraid, if you can do what is right, not what is easy, then you are one step closer to being the wild woman. And also on the note of starting off as a blank canvas, I don't know if we truly do start off as a blank canvas. I think but this is just my personal belief system. I think that we come with karmic record, and I think, like, what Natalie is saying is very, very true. I think we need to, as this generation of women, we are going to become the crones that break the ancestral trauma that has happened to the multiple generations before us. It's our job now to teach the ones younger than us, our daughters, their daughters. We need to find the bone so that we can tell them the stories, so that they can find the bone so they can tell the stories. And so on and so on.
Definitely, I think that's so important. It was actually something I wanted to bring up after Natalie shared again about, I can't remember exactly what you said, but it made me think about the witch wound. Shanna also mentioned this in the beginning, but as women, we all have this innate fear, and you're right about the blank canvas, because we do come with karmic whatevers. And I think a lot of it has to do with the witch wound from lives past or our ancestors past, whatever you believe, where we were burnt when we spoke our truth, when we used nature to heal or for anything. And that, I think, is a reason why the wild woman has been lost so deeply, because we are all too scared to speak our truth, to step into our purpose that might not be deemed societally normal, but there's a need for that now. There's a need for women to reclaim their wild and to reclaim their wisdom and to share that with each other. And I think that's what's so beautiful about this book club, is that we get to experience this book together and share this wisdom together and learn from each other, which is so beautiful. And I'm hoping that from this book club, it really inspires people to follow their calling, follow their passion, really dig deep and start to peel back all those layers that we've layered upon ourselves, and start to really just dig deep and ask ourselves, who am I really? Which part of me?
Also, I think. No, I was just going to say also, we must remember they've worked really hard to divide us. They've worked really hard to make us go, oh, look at her, she's so skinny. Oh my God, she should have eaten a hamburger. Oh God, look at her, she's so fat. Blah blah blah. That's all stuff that's, because let's be honest, the hardest one, the ones that are most judgmental of a woman are other women. Mm-hmm. We do a good job of blaming all these beauty standards, body standards on men, but like we do it to each other. Mm-hmm. And it's because of our conditioning, and that we can blame on patriarchy to a certain extent, but we need to remember that when we are interacting with each other.
That's why I think it's so important to really educate yourself on these types of things, right? Like, we have the trilogy wounds of the witch wound, the sister wound, and the mother wound. And what you're talking about there was like 100% the sister wound, where we have been taught that we need to compete with each other instead of collaborate. So we gossip about each other and we do whatever we can to make ourselves better than the other. And we, it's ugly and it's unnecessary, and it again divides us, like you said. And how do you conquer? You divide. So we need to collaborate, we need to come together again, and this, I feel, is such a beautiful space to do that, especially with this beautiful book that we're reading that is like so aligned. So I'm super excited to see where this takes us all, and to watch everyone's journey unravel in their own unique way.
I'm just so excited to have some people to share it with, finally.
We're forced now to read this book. But it's beautiful. And I just skip past the words that you don't understand, and the rest, it'll be fine.
No, look at her. I just Google shit. Like I Google stuff as I'm reading, and then I fall down Google rabbit holes, and then I find out about like ancient bisentient goddesses and stuff, and it's fascinating. I love it.
Love the rabbit hole. Yeah, no, even reading it the second time, I have to be honest, like, I'm like, first, let me tell you, the first time I started reading this book, I think I got like 5 pages in and I was like, what the fuck have I got myself into here? I was like, nope, not reading this, put it in the shelf. And then like, universe kept sending me like Women Who Run with the Wolves everywhere. And I was like, okay, fine. 1st of Jan, goal, read this book. So I read it and I'm so glad. But reading it again, I must say it's a lot easier. I think once you've gained the concept of the book, it's the same thing as when you watch a movie 2, 3, 4 times, you know the storyline. So you pick up smaller nuances and you like start to actually see more and like pick up more in the movie. So it's the same. I think it'll be the same with this book. So I'm excited for that. But for the rest of you who are reading it for the first time, do not give up. It is incredible. Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to share anything? Okay, Asma says over-intellectualization can obscure the patterns of instinctual nature of women. I'm not sure if I agree with this or disagree. I mean, everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but over-intellectualization, how I interpret it, is again getting stuck in the head, which again disconnects us from the body. So, I mean, it's like this is why we're here, ladies, to share how we interpret the book. To share how we feel about the book and to discuss it with each other so we can walk away with a bigger perspective of the book, right? So yeah, Asma, I don't know if you want to chat a little bit. No pressure.
Come on, Asma.
It reminds me of something that something that my spiritual teacher once explained to me when it was about astrology, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to go into what it was. And it became a very high, over-intellectualized conversation. And she said to me, it is like mental masturbation for people. And so you can get into a debate, or you can get into a conversation and stuff, and you want to prove everything scientifically. You want to read every single article about it. You want to be, like Roxy said, be completely like in your head about it, right? And that takes away from the embodiment. Over-intellectualization can obscure the patterns of instinctual nature of women. Does that make a lot more sense to you in that sense? I mean, it comes down to balance, right? It comes down to balance. Because I've seen this a lot, and I've seen how people have missed beautiful opportunities of connecting to the divine by mentally masturbating. Because some people get high, because people get extremely excited about some mental arguments and stuff, you know, like they get like in it, man. And it's like an addiction almost. And
I think also, it's just coming to me now thinking about Asma's question, like over-intellectualization, again, for me, I'm interpreting it as like being in the head, the mind, whatever. But like the reason why it obscures the patterns of instinctual nature of women is because we are instinctual by nature, right? And where does our instincts come from? Our intuition. And our intuition comes from a beautiful collaboration between our heads, our hearts, and our guts, or our wombs. So when we over-intellectualize, we think, and we make our decision from one point of our intuition, where we need to involve all three and find the instinctual decisions that agree with all three senses, right? I don't know, that's just what I was thinking, but hopefully that helps you, Asma.
I have a
Also-
last thing to, oh, sorry, Shanna.
No problem. Also, I think that when you think too much, you start trying to be right, and there is no right way to be human, really. You know what I mean? So, like, I think that's also where the intellect, I can't even say it now. But when you think too much about certain things, you also can't hear. So it's like this whole thing, like when you're talking, you can't listen. So when you're thinking too much, you cut yourself also off from the divine knowing. So you can't hear your ancestors or your guides, or you can't hear what the earth is trying to tell you, because you're too busy thinking. So, like, to put it in like a simple way, like, again, and bringing it back to when you know rain is coming, there's so many ways that nature tells you that the rain is coming. But if you're so busy thinking about what you're going to make for dinner, who you're going to phone next, what needs to happen, blah, 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 you don't see the signs because you're too busy thinking. Sorry, that's all I wanted to say.
And you can miss the beauty of things. I read something beautiful in Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth, and he speaks about how we have this obsession to name things and define things. When we see a tree, we want to, what kind of tree is this? Or what kind of flower is this? What's the name of this leaf? Instead of being completely present and just embracing the tree and seeing the beauty of the tree. You know, that's how I understand the over intellectualization is an obsession to one of the things, like to name things, to give them names, to define them. No.
And even to time, I was listening to a podcast today, and she was talking about when they have daylight savings time, how it messes up her whole circadian rhythm. And she was like, I get all upset about it, but she's like, I can literally just go along with my own time. Like, I work for myself. And I was so true. I was like, we get so upset about these things that happen in the external world, but at the end of the day, like, we control our lives. We don't control everything that goes on around us, but like, we like co-create our lives with the divine, with God, with source, whatever you believe. So like, you can decide what works for you and what doesn't. And I think when we get too stuck in our heads and too stuck in the rules and our conditioning, that's when we lose contact with our essence, because again, we just not going with the flow. That's what we want to be doing. We're just going with the flow of the rules and the conditioning and the way we were expected to be, instead of just doing whatever the hell you please in a way, with integrity, obviously. I'm not going to run around burning shit down or whatever sparks out.
That's exactly, yeah, the circadian rhythm is a very good example of it. Because that's your rhythm with nature. That's like literally your body's connection to the earth that you live on. It's your internal clock. It's how your body literally wants to work. And then your brain goes, no, but that's not right. That didn't go with that podcast that I listened to last week. So it's wrong. My body's wrong. And I need to do it right. And I think that's where the over intellectual that.
That's how I feel today. Like, just elude me today. I just wanted to read Asma's comment here. She said she highlighted this part because I had two perspectives of it. One, overthinking ruins the intuition, yes. Two, about by discerning, by investigating, by being more curious, cautious, we also win. So yes, I would say you need a balance of all of these things, right? We can't just completely disregard the head now because we're too much in the head and just go making these intuitive decisions from our gut. We need to rationalize stuff a little bit, right? But it's finding that balance again, listening to your intuition, but also like having a little bit of rational thought, but knowing when you steer too much into the one. So thanks for bringing that point up, Asma. I think it was a very good
spoiler alert, she goes into it. The book, she, so that's also like we're asking all these questions and bringing up all these things, but and I know we're doing a chapter by chapter, but like honestly, she touches on all these things, the sorting this from that, the finding your intuition, knowing when to listen, knowing when to talk. She goes into all these concepts throughout the book. So yeah, so we got a lot to look forward to.
We do indeed. Nat.
Yeah, and just adding on that, she actually, and I noticed this, she actually mentions the mind a lot when she talks about it. She mentions the mind and the psyche, and so she definitely mentions it. So yes, it's definitely is like a part, but I don't think it's everything, but it is a part of the wild woman, and and of our intuition and our instinct. The mind is definitely a part of that.
100%. We can't just throw away one part of us because now we realize maybe we've been operating too much from our heads, so let's get rid of it completely so the rest of them can have a chance. Again, it's just finding that balance and like really fully tapping into all elements of yourself before you make a decision, instead of just being like, no, I don't deserve this, or I could never do that, and all these things that come from the head, that the heart and the guts and the rest of your body's like, come on, let's just try. Let's reconnect back to ourselves and find that confidence and that flow and that passion again. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, I think she speaks very like strongly from a mental point of view, because she is a Jungian psychologist. The author, Clarissa, is she's an archetypal analytical psychologist. So she's coming from the intellectual background. And she found interesting, like, and it is, Jung touches on it a lot in his psychological work, because he was one of the first psychologists to link spirituality to psychology. So I think that it is a very special part of her work, that the story archetypes are actually parts of our own psyche that we translate into stories so that we can teach them and recognize them to others.
Definitely. I think her background is such a beautiful combination of obviously the psyche side from that element, but also from her cultural background of the storytellers that she's been exposed to and her travels and all that stuff. So this book is very well rounded, and I feel like Shanna said, she does touch on all the points that we brought up today, which is so beautiful because it's just going to unravel even more and more as we meet up every month. But yeah, I think like the theme that we've been chatting about now is just finding that balance, like not too much on the one side, not too much on the other side, just like coming back into that like state of balance, almost that, I wouldn't say state of neutrality, but like that can trigger some people, but it's like just knowing when to do something, when not, and we'll learn about that as we read through the book. So I'm super, super excited to see how this book club unfolds.
Like my favorite line in the book is, bone by bone, hair by hair, the wild woman comes back.
And that's exactly what I feel like is going to happen over the next year while you finish this book. It's going to be a beautiful year indeed. Okay. Is there anyone else who wants to share anything? Otherwise, we can start to wrap things up. Alrighty. I think we've all spoken our parts. Awesome, ladies. Well, this was incredible, honestly. Like, went way past my my expectations. I think it's just so beautiful when women come together and learn from each other, share their perspective on things, and yeah, we all just chat openly about something so beautiful like the wild woman. So I'm super excited to see how this unravels. I think it's going to be so transformational for every single one of us that are in this book club. And keep sharing on the Telegram group. I mean, that's where the community builds. That's where we get to know each other. That's where we can share our insights before the book club, because I think also we'll have some book clubs where there might be a lot of women that attend, and there just won't be enough time for us all to get our 2 cents in. So let's keep chatting about the book in the group. Let's keep getting to know each other in the group. Let's keep building this beautiful community of collaboration and wisdom and learning from each other. And yeah, we'll keep in contact with you on the group with regards to the next meeting. But until then, is there anything you want to say before we sign off, Tash?
No, just that our next chapter will be chapter 2, Stalking the Intruder, the Beginning Initiation. So that's 35 pages.
Perfect. Yeah, so pretty much same time as the last assignment.
Yeah.
But we'll share that in the Telegram group as well. Awesome, ladies. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for just being here. If you didn't share, but you just took in the wisdom, have a beautiful evening, and we will see you in the Telegram group.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.